Hello, I'm Patricia Kristof Moy with Music at Kohl Mansion, and I'm here today with the members of the Horszowski Trio, and I'm so delighted to see all three of you. So our audience knows you two, knows this trio very, very well. But the wonderful thing is that during the pandemic, we have acquired a lot of new audience members who have only joined us online, and that's very exciting for us.
Wonderful.
So we're delighted to, for those who know you, to have you back, and for those who don't, to introduce you.
My name is Ola Akahoshi. I am the newest member of the Horszowski Trio. I am talking from Shelton, Connecticut.
My name is Jesse Mills. I'm here with my wife, Rieko, and the pianist of our group. And we are currently on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City.
And of course, since the last time you were with us 4 years ago, Ola has been new to the trio, so I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, it's so great to have Ole with us. Everyone who knows Ole speaks of him very highly as an elegant cellist with beautiful tone. And most importantly, Justin and I feel very lucky that we can make music with someone who values the same thing as we do, integrity, tradition, and challenges.
We've been, very lucky as a trio to continue to be, active during this time. We've done a lot together. We've been rehearsing a lot together and performing virtually and actually some live concerts. I'm glad to be here in this form, obviously, but hopefully in person before long.
So have you all been able to teach then during the pandemic?
Yeah, actually, Jesse and Rick, we've been talking about how things have changed. So that's a lot of the lessons are quite a bit more focused. In fact, students are more focused, and we are focused. We really, literally zoomed in.
The experience of teaching on Zoom is totally acceptable especially for one-on-one lessons. The chamber music obviously is a little bit more challenging. Actually, Rieko can speak to that. But it's a little bit more focused. You have to express yourself clearly and to try to make sure that things don't get confusing. And even this conversation can be, there's a little bit of a delay. There's a little bit of confusion that just naturally sets in. So I found myself trying to talk slower and to try to be very specific. And it's been actually a good challenge for me because I feel like even in person, I'm going to incorporate some of that, just extremely clear, focused language, leaving very little room for, misunderstanding.
I have to say with the piano, because of it's not just a single line, so sometimes the internet can really handle to transfer all the sounds. So sometimes it's very difficult, especially with international students, if they don't have good internet connection. But in that case, I often ask them to record themselves first,
Right.
and then email to me so that we can discuss. But because of the videotaping process, they actually do it over and over until they feel satisfied. So in a way, some of them actually got improved very quickly.
I think I've heard, Jesse, that you've got some pretty good video skills and some technology skills. And so I'm very excited to see what our concert will be. Tell us, maybe a little bit about how and where and what that recording process has involved.
Sure. Well, I'll just preface this by saying that the first thing that happened to us at the beginning of the pandemic, right before New York City shut down, I think it was about an hour and a half before the official deadline for shutdown, was that our refrigerator broke. And so we were scrambling to go to the PC Richards around the corner, and luckily we're able to, Rieko and I together, carry this refrigerator up the stairs and get it into the apartment. And I'm so glad that we did that because, that's probably the number one thing that we've done since is eat. No, is to prepare, food and stuff, because there's no restaurants pretty much. But this is all to say that my appreciation for technology began with that. I kind of get into the tech side of things. I enjoy the challenges of creating things, in this virtual space, and so I kind of just sank right into it, and I taught myself Final Cut Pro. It's one more thing in between our audience and our music making, but it, on the other hand, allows for our efforts to be viewed by so many people. Like Ole's family is in all over the world, in both in Asia and in Germany. He was born and raised in Berlin, and Rieko's family is in Japan, and we've been able to include them and so much more in our music making since that, as an example.
How do you compensate for what the audience gives you in a live performance?
At least for us, like when we make music at that moment, we never forget the feelings of sharing it with audience, no matter what. So even through the screen or not, I think we still make the same kind of, right? We don't lose the passion, and yeah.
It's real, true chamber music. It can't be more chamber music than this.
No audiences previously have been this close to us in our small apartment here in New York City. So in a way, and that's the way we've always rehearsed and made music for ourselves. So we're kind of just letting people into that space with us, and so that's how I'm looking at it. And so I think it is a very intimate moment, of music making. We enjoy it, so we hope that the audience does too.
Well, it's very exciting because our entire season has been shot in various concert halls. And so this is the only living room concert that we will have. And I'm very excited about, because I know it's a beautiful and intimate and lovely space.
Yeah, I'll just say Ole hasn't yet had the opportunity to see Kohl Mansion, but Ole, our house is not as nice as Kohl Mansion.
So we're going to be hearing two pieces that you chose for us, that I'd like to hear about why you selected these pieces and how do you feel about the pieces of the Sibelius and Schubert that we're going to hear.
Well, Sibelius, this piece is hardly performed, so it's a hidden treasure. He was still very young when he wrote this piece, and it's very, how can I say, very happy, youthful, fresh, and so we like it very much. And then the Schubert, opposite of hidden treasure, masterpiece. Like, who wouldn't love it? So yeah,
we thought that this would be a good. The Schubert B flat trio is one of our favorites, and in some ways embodies the qualities of springtime, I think, and in the time that we're in right now, and maybe also has a certain hopefulness to the music. And so we have really enjoyed it, and really enjoyed playing it for each other and for ourselves, and for you too. So.
Well, yeah, Schubert is a quite challenging piece musically, as well as from storytelling point of view. And I find it the juxtaposition of Sibelius and Schubert is very wonderful, because, as Rieko said, Sibelius wrote the piece early on in his life. He was still a student, I believe, and Schubert wrote the B flat major trio towards the end of his life. Rather short life, unfortunately, but so it's quite a mature but very, very deep piece.
Is there anything you would say to either of those composers about those pieces, if you could speak to them today or ask them?
Oh, there's so many questions. What would you say, Jesse?
Well, I could think of detailed questions for Schubert, for example, because we're poring over the score to this masterpiece, and always discovering new things. And what's interesting is there are many slight changes, and this is true for a lot of Schubert's music, where there's the same theme might happen in the same movement at different times, maybe in a different key or maybe in the same key, and but there are different articulations and even different notes slightly in the different versions. So I would go right into asking him about that and say, did you really mean for this to be a short note and then for the next time for it to be slurred, that kind of thing. But I don't know if our audience here is going to be as interested in those details and minutia, but maybe. But also the other thing that we've heard about Sibelius.
Oh
is,
yeah, so
well,
I think he's known as the synesthetic composer.
Oh, was he? Did he have synesthesia?
Yeah, apparently. So, definitely, I would love to ask him, like, what kind of color, he was thinking for the certain sections or certain harmonies. But you'll hear this piece. It's not that he was using such complicated harmonies, but the combination of harmonies are quite unusual. So sometimes we go to a surprising key or so definitely it's a very colorful, bright. I would say very bright, not like a violin concerto kind of intense. But so I would be curious about colors.
That's fascinating. Well, so speaking of synesthesia, the beautiful painting behind you by Peggy July, who's a San Francisco-based artist, and we met Peggy through you 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, right.
And she has come and painted at Kohl Mansion since then. So do you know, Peggy is an artist, of course, who paints to music, mostly classical music, but other music as well. Do you, was the piece behind you painted for a concert that you played? And what piece was it?
Oh, so this one, I don't know if you can show the whole thing, but
Yeah.
this is the last movement, third movement of Debussy Image, Book One. So when I saw this painting in the gallery, there were two other paintings in the same series. So first movement, second movement, and this one was third movement. And only this one was like narrower than other two. So I asked her why, and she said, "Oh, Rieko, because third movement is the shortest."
So when you begin rehearsing together and you begin rehearsing a new piece, what does that look like? What is the process? What do you talk about? Who talks most? Who takes the lead?
Well, we are a truly democratic ensemble here, and so there's no structure pre-planned, a method or structure to our rehearsing. We just say whatever comes into our heads, but I think. I mean, obviously, we've all looked at the music before we get together for the first time, and we have studied the score and our parts and stuff. But I think there's a certain we want to make sure that we don't make too many decisions on our own before we get together, because it's actually it's more for the music making. It's better that we come with an open mind, even though we have opinions, if that makes any sense.
We talk more through the playing, I believe. Jesse's bow arm, he speaks through the bow arm, and Reiko's touch, and then we communicate through the music. If we talk verbally, it's oftentimes about colors, character, the mood.
Of course.
Sometimes tempi, but it's about those things. But if it just works, the chemistry seems to be.
How much freedom do you feel you might have within the written music? And it's different in every piece. I'm sure it's different with every composer. I work with singers a lot. I work in opera, and there's a lot of interpretation that happens that's off the page. So can you talk a little bit about how you feel about that sort of loyalty to the written?
The primary goal is to really honor what the composer has written, and that in and of itself is such a challenge. Thinking about the Schubert in particular, we're very careful. I think the reason that the three of us get along so well is that it's kind of we express ourselves, but we want to always keep the proportion between personal expression and faithfulness to the composer and the score. I've always thought that if you just really try to honor what's in the music, that inevitably your own voice will, as you sing the lines, will come out. But if we think too much about how are we going to make it ours, how are we going to do our thing, it can easily go too far in that direction. And I'm not saying anything that's something that we don't all know, but but I do think that it depends on the music because, for example, we're playing very soon the Morton Feldman Piano Trio. And that is a very long, as you can imagine, 2-hour or more, depending on our tempo, work. It was written towards in the 1980s. And Morton Feldman, the composer, does not give us very many opportunities to interpret. It's really all about execution. And yet that's a really fun experience for us because, you kind of feel like you're just channeling his voice, So that's an extreme case. I feel these pieces today have some freedom.
But remember one of the lessons I had with Mr. Horszowski, he told me that his mother was also a pianist, and she studied with one of Chopin's students.
Wow.
And apparently, she learned that Chopin, when he was teaching his students who were playing his music, of course, it's so beautiful, and they always wanted to make rubatos and that. And apparently, he said, "Please keep your left hand steady." Absolutely steady. And then I started looking at the score very carefully. Like he's very specific where he wanted like a little ritardando or whatever. So that was a really great lesson I learned, that just to really be faithful to the composer, and the most important thing is how we can bring composer's message to the audience. That's our job.
I think that I've been told that going back to the Baroque times that and then in the classical era too, obviously Mozart, a great improviser, so many great composers who were great performers and improvisers as well as compose and writing the scores, and then we got away from that at some point, and it became a real segregation, or how should you say, compartmentalization. It's like the performers perform and the composers compose, and now we're in a time when we're maybe going back to having a little more freedom. I like to improvise myself, and I wouldn't go as far as to call myself a professional composer, but I do compose and enjoy that, and I think it informs me as a performer as well.
We feel very fortunate to work with live composers like Ezra Laderman or Martin Bresnik. And of course, as Jesse said, every composer is different, and the language is different, and the decoding and coding process is different, putting it on paper. But when I was learning Ezra Laderman's cello concerto with him, and there's a passage where I took quite a bit of liberty, and I asked him whether that's okay, and he actually said that was not his intention, but he actually liked it, so I should keep it that way. Composers I've worked with, they're quite flexible and open-minded, and they change things, and their work is oftentimes still a work in progress.
Maybe I'll sort of switch gears a little bit and ask you, what is it, either in current times or in non-pandemic times, what does each of you love to do that's non-musical? What are your favorite hobbies or activities when you're not playing or performing or rehearsing? Ola, do you want to start?
Sure. I think our common hobbies, Jesse, Reiko, now, it's obviously food. That's where we all come together. But 5 years ago, I picked up, which I always wanted to do for my whole life. It's archery, recurve, and it's been so much fun. It's very, very. It gives me a peace of mind. It's almost like meditation, but at the same time, it's very physical, and it has been so much fun.
Well, actually, I wish I could share the video that we took of Ole doing his archery inside the house with us. He built a target and was on the other end. He has a big house, and he built, was on the other end. And he, of course, as you'll hear from his playing in the Schubert, no surprise that he was just bullseye every time, which was really inspiring. But also, kind of great to see him in the whole getup with his safety goggles and all that. It's really
I hope you stood very far away.
I was on the opposite side of the bow. My personal hobby, I guess, I have lots of hobbies. One of them is cycling. I like to ride my bicycle around
Manhattan.
Yeah, and I'm originally from the suburbs here in New Jersey, and so occasionally I'll take a ride out to visit my parents who still live in the house I grew up in. But most of the riding I do is short, just to run errands or something. But it is similar to what Ole was saying. It's a different headspace, and it's really relaxing for me. So.
Well, I guess I'm the least physical person in this group, but I enjoy swimming, and I just actually recently started going back to the gym. I got vaccinated, so I feel more comfortable. And but other than that, we used to play ping pong together, but we kind of stopped doing it because we got a little bit competitive with each other.
Let's just say somebody was a little mean.
No, but
and it wasn't me.
But I used to be in a ping pong club when I was growing up in Japan. So, but anyway, other than that, since this pandemic started, I started cooking things which I never thought I would. Which is the first thing was making my own mayonnaise. And it's rather simple to make it, but it's not easy.
What would you recommend that we suggest for dinner to accompany this concert?
We were thinking about food and music connections, and maybe vodka for the Finnish composer Sibelius, and maybe some Wiener Schnitzel for Schubert. I'm not sure at the same time or one after the other, but I think that would be a good combination.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience in Burlingame and our Music at Kohl audiences who miss you?
I'm very sincere when I tell you that maybe the experiences that we've had at Kohl Mansion have been really at the very top of the list for us in terms of places we've been and played. And a lot of that has to do with the conversations that we have had, afterwards at the reception, and feeling very comfortable, and with you too, Patricia. I always, really enjoy seeing you. So we miss being there. We're really disappointed that we couldn't make the trip, but totally support the decision to do it this way at this time, and just gives us an opportunity to look forward to something happening again in the future, in that old way. But in the meantime, we do hope that you enjoy our performance, from this very intimate space of our own home.
I know that we will, and I thank you for all those very kind words. We miss you, and there will be another opportunity to have you live at the Mansion and to introduce Ole to the Mansion and to our audience. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Thank you for spending these few minutes with me. It's such a pleasure, and we look forward to this concert with great excitement.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you for having